Welcome, everyone, to the Meaningful Hearts Podcast, where we discuss the everyday questions that make us or break us if we let them. I am your host, Drew. Take my hand and let's walk this journey together. Welcome back to another episode, and today we want to talk about being kind to ourselves. Kindness. Almost like a self-love remix. I don't know if I've any OG listeners on here that heard the first episode, but loving ourselves, what that means, the meaning of kindness. I know that COVID is, a short time away from, and we've literally just got out of this so-called pandemic, but I think it changed a lot of people. It made us more aware of how people act to each other as well as how we treat ourselves. I mean, we were indoors for a long time. A lot of wild stuff happened. We lost some loved ones. So I want to get into that a little bit. See if we still love ourselves the way we did 60 episodes ago. Daniela, what do you think?
A wee bit. You said a little bit, and that's what I.
A wee bit.
A wee bit.
Oh,
a teeny tiny bit. Yeah, I think that's a great topic, and it's a very cliche topic to talk about.
Tell me about it.
Well, I am. But it is very cliche because you get, a lot of those like wall decors. If you can be anything in the world, be kind. Or, I actually have a t-shirt that says, if you're going to be, you can either be human or you can be kind or you can be both. It's a little corny. Maybe even a little confusing now that I'm thinking about it.
It was on sale too.
Yeah. So you hear it everywhere. You see it everywhere. The importance of being kind. I also have another t-shirt that says kindness is free because, people have a hard time being kind to others, especially in high demanding, stressful environments like people who live in New York City, for example, or in places where it's very fast paced, people are in a rush all the time, or, people who work in hospitals, the emergency room. I can only imagine what that's like. So people forget to be kind to others. And I think that the most important person that we forget to be kind to is ourselves. And just like a reminder to people that, sometimes I wonder, kindness really is free. It doesn't take anything. So, what makes it so difficult for us to be kind to ourselves?
I think that we're all taught to think of ourselves first in a survival, I guess in a way of survival, right? Not everybody's raised this way. I know that I was to an extent. I'm sure to an extent you were too. Where you don't grow up with a lot. So you're always like trying to dig yourself out of the mud, and the people around you are also trying to dig themselves out of the mud. So it's like, oh, don't worry about what they're doing. You worry about what you're doing. You make sure you take care of yours before you do anything for anybody else. And I always found the problem with that. Like I always wanted to be giving and I always wanted to be kind to others. And it was like, I couldn't understand why. It was like a conflict. When I thought I was doing something nice for someone, if I wanted to offer something, it's like, yo, we don't have enough for us. Like, how are you going to offer to somebody else? And I felt really bad. I was like shamed for it to an extent. And I guess as time goes on, as you get older, it becomes part of your identity because this is all you know. And I think that's part of the problem is that it's taught in our houses. It's taught in our homes that, worry about yourself. Don't, I'm not concerned with the other people. In reality, though, I always go back to this, depiction of heaven, depiction of hell, and how, you go to hell and you see this buffet of food and there's these giant spoons, and everybody's trying to put the spoon in their own mouth, and they're struggling, and the food's going everywhere. And then the depiction of heaven is it's the same people sitting in around the buffet, but one person's helping the other person feed. They feed their neighbor, and then so on and so forth by putting the spoon up to the other person's mouth. And it's incredible because everybody eats. That's the biggest thing. You listen to Tony Robbins, even Tony Robbins talks about don't wait to give. Give now at whatever capacity that is. Because if you don't do it now, even when you have enough, you won't do it anyways. And it's interesting. So being kind doesn't require a lot. There's so many ways in which you could do that.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think you and I are seeing it a little bit differently, but not necessarily like in a bad way. From what I'm hearing is, kindness to others, like our struggle to be kind to others. And I think that starts, because a lot of us weren't taught to be kind to ourselves. So how could we be kind to others when we don't even know how to be kind to ourselves? So before we can learn the importance of, being able to feed other people and other people feeding us, we really have to, think about being kind to ourselves. Do we deserve that spoon? And I think that's where people, I know for myself in my life, it's actually when I was in my second college, because I've been to a couple of colleges. I think I mentioned in our previous episode that I've been through some dark times in my life, and I didn't hate people, but I was afraid of people a lot. So I was very introverted, very to myself, and I just didn't understand people a lot. And I've always been an observant person. So at the time, I was working in the city, in New York City, and I was a barista in the Upper East Side. And for anybody who knows what the Upper East Side is like, and just in general, it doesn't really matter actually, there are areas of any city, any place where people tend to be meaner than others. And in this particular area, that was what I noticed a lot about people. And I remember one of the servers, he really encouraged me to become a server, but I was super afraid. And, he'd ask me why. And I would say, well, because people are not kind. And I'm already, at the time, I felt like I was very delicate, I guess. So I was really afraid. I didn't really think that it was worth it to try to be kind because people are not kind to each other. So what's the point? And then when I was in the college that I'm talking about, I dormed at the time, and I had this roommate who she is, 'cause she's still alive, but she was this Brazilian chick, and we played soccer together, and she was kind to everybody, like every single person that she came across. She was so kind to. And I remember asking her one day, like, why do you do that? Like, people literally, if anybody knows what it's like to ride the New York City subway or any crowded subway, if you slightly bump into somebody, you get like this really terrible death stare of like, I'm gonna kill you if you touch me again type of stare. And I asked her, like, why? Like, why? And she said, it always resonates. And she said that if you approach somebody with a straight face, or if you don't approach somebody at all, or if you're very standoffish, there's a 0% chance that they're going to be, nice to you. But if you approach somebody with kindness, you get a 50% chance that they're going to be mean and a 50% chance that they're going to be nice. And they can still be mean, but at least you've increased your odds. And that's always resonated with me, because then I started to apply it. All right, I'm going to start being kinder to people. And sure, there are people who are just not kind at all. But my way of thinking changed. The world is already a cruel place. And I also learned to be kinder to myself, which helps me be kinder to others. And I think that that's where, at least for myself growing up, you know, there was no positive reinforcement, or very little of it, at least. You know, when we grow up, it's not congratulations, you did such a good job. It's you must do a good job and then you get a congratulations. And it's distorted in a lot of ways, because I think if we were taught to love ourselves, we would be able to be kinder to others. We would be able to, express love and gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it always starts internally to give externally. At the same time, it also sometimes you might you might overgive and not give to yourself. I've seen people that are very kind to others but not kind to themselves. And sometimes even giving to other people, we forget that it is kind of selfish. We do get a benefit from that. It's not a bad benefit. It's a good one. It actually gives back. When you give away, you get back. It helps you feel more fulfilled in your life. You couldn't have an abundance of everything and not give. And you could not give, but I don't think you'd feel fulfilled. I don't care if you say that you are, if you don't actually give, you're definitely not. You're definitely there's something missing in your life. I could definitely say that for sure. But it always starts internally.
Yeah,
I agree. I think I've always been generous. Like just thought of cool opportunities to give. I've always felt like that. I think that's pretty much what got me into doing this podcast, right? The whole premise of this podcast is to give. If I could help one person and change their life, I would have lived a good life at that point.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's one of the things that resonates with me the most when I first started listening. And granted, I'm a little biased because we're together, but I'm also I can also be objective enough to acknowledge that what you're trying to bring is to give value. Yeah. But now let me ask you a question.
Okay.
How kind are you to yourself?
Hey, I struggle with that. That's a hard one. I strive for excellence. I strive for being better than I was the day before. And sometimes I have days where I'm very hard on myself. And I realize something. I mean, this comes from self-reflection, also from Daniela asking me this, right? That I started to think, well, I think most of us do this. We beat ourselves up because we don't look at ourselves as an individual, as a person. We don't see ourselves from the outside. When we get to see other people, other human beings, we get to see them breathing, standing in front of us with emotions, everything. But we look outside of our bodies. We don't see ourselves until we look in the mirror, right? It's the whole expression, do you see yourself? You see yourself when you look in the mirror and how you feel about yourself. Well, imagine you could see yourself at all times acting and getting beat up by yourself. If you could see that and witness it, if you could look at yourself as a person and say, wow, I'm being terrible to this person. I need to love this person. I think you would approach things a lot differently. So part of what I've started to do is try to look at myself out externally, like I envision myself standing in front of me and how they're, the expressions, the things that I'm saying to myself, but to that person. Cause like, once again, we want to look at it as a person. Yeah. I always do the air quotes. Italian. I talk with my hands. That's how I am. But it started to change the way that I see myself. Even when I'm getting on myself about things, I imagine me beating myself up and speaking down to myself. And I'm like, wow, I should give myself a break. I should hug myself and love myself. Because at the end of the day, like we're inside this body, we're running this ship. So and it's only beneficial for you to have a better life, right? Because if internally, imagine if you can give and do so much for somebody else, and you're not even running optimally because you're getting at yourself so much. But if you could take care of yourself and give yourself that love and light, how much better it would be going out to other people, and how much more you could do ultimately to help other people. So does that answer your question? Huh?
Yes, it certainly does, which is a good segue into, a tip, a piece, a tool for people listening that they can potentially start to apply. Because talking about kindness is great, but that's just it, right? We struggle to be kind to ourselves. And I think, what you have suggested is actually a great idea, because we don't see ourselves outside of ourselves unless you're detaching from reality, but that's a different kind of conversation. But if we start to treat ourselves like a person as opposed to ourself, which sounds a little contradicting, but I hear what you're saying. We might be able to visualize, wow, like I am a person with feelings. I do deserve kindness, and I do deserve love. I think that's a great way to start to practice being kind to ourselves. Another way is, when you wake up in the morning, I'm maybe like 80-90% sure a bunch of the population, the first things that they think about in the morning is, what do I have to do today? What am I going to worry about today? Whether they know it or not. So if in the first thing in the morning, you get out of bed and you say, yes, I did it. I made it. No matter how I'm feeling, whether I had a bad dream, whether my sleep wasn't that good. Kindness is really not as hard as we human beings make it out to be. What's hard is practicing and being intentional. But it's just 2 tips that people can consider.
Yeah. I think intention is big. The language that you use about yourself, the way you talk, just in general, it happens throughout the day, and until you become mindful of it, you don't realize how bad it really is. Once again, even if you're joking, oh, I'm such an idiot. Oh, I'm so stupid. Like, your body, whether you like it or not, actually receives that. Like, imagine a person sitting next to you, your virtual twin, and is barking at you, saying all this stuff to you. That's really what it is. Your mind's like, oh, you start to adopt, and this starts to become part of who you are. Very super critical of yourself in the way that you talk to yourself, and it reflects in the things you do, your actions. It gets out of control. You don't realize where it started, but it's so infused into your being that you don't even remember. But the cool thing is that once you become aware, you start to change that language, and then you become this new person. It starts with being aware. I think that's part of it. That's the big part of it. Awareness. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, and all in between.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
I'm nodding my head. Agree.
I'm being forced to agree.
Well, I'm going to end it on a good note. And I think we should stop for a moment and really look ourselves in our virtual mirrors, or if we have a mirror in front of us right now while we're on our headsets, and say something kind to each other or to ourselves. Hey, wow, you're smart. You're amazing. You're beautiful. I acknowledge all the hard work that you put in each day. Things like that. And I think that once we make it a habit, every time we come across a mirror, or every time we think about maybe something that's not going right, we take a step back and we appreciate ourselves in some sort of way. And I think that will go a long way. And we'll leave it there. I appreciate you all. Thank you for listening, Daniela.
Thank you.
We'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.